it for years. This show is going to the dogs. Well, today it's true. Let's talk about it with Travis Vining on Steve Brown, etc.
He's an old white guy, an author, broadcaster, and seminary professor who's sick of religion. And he's brought friends. Please welcome Steve Brown, etc.
Hey, we're so glad you're here, that you would take an hour out of your busy schedule to spend it with us is a high and holy compliment, and we consider it that. In case you're wondering, I'm Steve, the aforementioned old white guy. We're going to talk about dogs today, and I have one. I've had German Shepherds most of my life, and this is the only female Shepherd that we have. Her name is Annie. She is very big and identifies as a male. I have a transgender dog in my household. Matthew Porter, our executive producer, is here. Matthew, you got a dog?
I don't have a dog, but I have 4 kids and a wife who would like a dog, so there's a good chance I'm soon going to have a dog.
But you have 4 cats.
I have 4 cats.
Oh my!
Would you?
Poor dog.
Would you like the transgender big black shepherd?
I bet I could get some kind of grant if I had that. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying no.
Either that or a place on the Russian Olympic team.
Yeah, right. Our producer Jinx is in the little glass booth. Are you a dog guy, Jinx?
No, I'm a cat guy. I feel that if you got a dog, it better work. Bird dog, something like that.
And our one-man IT department, John Myers, is in his tech bunker. John says, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but you can keep fixing his computer.
Ooh.
Hey, wait a minute.
We all know who that is.
And Dr. George Bingham is the president of Key Life. George, have you ever had a favorite dog?
Oh, they're all my favorites, but yes, had a Frisbee hound, and he was great.
A Frisbee hound. What's
yeah,
that?
well, one that likes chasing Frisbees.
Oh, I see.
Jumps up in the air and catches
one
them.
that if you didn't watch, you would squash him.
Yeah, well,
Still around?
no,
Doggy heaven?
let's not talk about it.
Oh,
And Kathy White is the soft, feminine side of the program. Kathy absolutely loves dogs, and especially German Shepherds, right? Oh, look at that look.
you can't
That's
hear the
a-
look, but you almost can.
That's a sad puppy look if I've ever seen one.
Actually, I'm very selective. I don't have a dog, but I'm very selective about the dogs that I like, and the dogs that I like are really cool dogs.
Yeah, you had one in your house for a long time.
I like hot dogs.
Oh, my
After
goodness,
the
yes.
hurricane.
Yes,
and
I did.
I understand you lost your salvation during that point.
No.
And had you died, you would have ended up in a very dark place.
No, but I did one time. You remember this? I did one time when I was on vacation in Maine. I did have to take my very, very dear friend's dog to the vet to have him put to sleep because she just couldn't do it.
And that's
And you
'cause
were ugly
love-
about it.
No, I wasn't.
Yes, you
ugly.
were.
I'm never ugly about anything. I am a nice, civil, wonderful, kind, compassionate, and patient person.
Well, I did once have a vet that I could recommend to kill your dog.
He did that one time.
Hey,
Wait,
guys,
I thought we were talking about hot dogs today. Y'all got me tricked here.
guys, this is going to be an unusual program. I don't think in all the years we've done this that we have done a program about dogs. And actually, it's not about dogs. It's about puppies. And actually, it's not about puppies. It's about people. And actually, it's not about people. It's about children. And this is going to blow you away. Travis Vining is my friend. He's a father, entrepreneur, author, and inspirational speaker. He runs a very successful and large travel agency. He has more than 15 years of involvement in counseling, educating, and speaking issues of child trauma, compulsive behaviors, addiction, depression, and forgiveness. And we brought him here to particularly fix me in those areas. Travis' new book, which I hold in my nicotine-stained fingers, is Laugh It Off, How to Unleash Your Superpower. Travis, thanks for taking time to be with us. I appreciate that very much. We had lunch not too long ago, and that's where this program kind of got into my mind that I couldn't get rid of it. We need to talk about this. This seems so out of the box, so crazy, and you don't do Jesus stuff with dogs, okay? It's just, that's in the Bible. I don't know where it is. I'm a Bible teacher, but I know it's there somewhere. How in the world, you care about kids, don't you?
Yes, I do, very much so. Yes, I do.
And where did the idea of this come from, and what does it do?
Well, honestly, I think the inspiration just came from watching puppies. And we did a program for older kids. They were high school kids that traveled on band trips. This was a few years ago. And it was kind of a kindness program. And we put the images of dogs and puppies on these cards, and they would pass them out during their trip. It was kind of teaching them about the golden rule, that they really discovered that the way they treated people was returned to them, and it improved their overall experience. And then the pandemic came about, and we kind of looked at what we had here. And for some reason, I was inspired to use puppies and dogs to teach young children about love, acceptance, and forgiveness. And frankly, it was natural, because when you look at them, not only are they engaging, entertaining, and it's something that kids are very interested in and will listen to, but puppies are very loving, accepting, and forgiving. And I think they're great examples of God's love. And it makes it an easy way to teach children really about God's love. It kind of simplifies it for them in a way that they can relate to and they can identify with.
Now, you have tested this in some school classes. How is that? How are kids responding to it?
So far, it's been wonderful. Holy Family Catholic School presented it to the entire fifth grade just recently, right before Lent or during Lent. And as a result, they will be presenting it to the kindergarten through fourth grade next year at the beginning of the school year and incorporate it into their curriculum. So we've presented some churches to their children's ministries and also to a couple of schools now. But we're kind of just getting started, honestly, Steve. I met with you just describing to you what we had created. So we're just now introducing it. But the response so far has been very good. And I think the main reason is it does provide a vehicle for a teacher, a facilitator, or a children's minister to really teach children a little bit more in depth about God's love. And it's not just God's love, it's what love is not, and how to tell the difference. And we feel like this provides them with a way to help teach children a little bit more about how to recognize the wolf in sheep's clothing, to be honest with you, which we think is extremely important, especially these days with what these kids are exposed to.
Yeah. You, and I can see how a children's minister in a church or a Christian school would use them. But you know where this needs to go? It needs to go in our public schools. Is there any possibility that will ever happen?
Well, I hope so. It's not up to me, as you know. I mean, it's in God's hands. So if that's the case, I mean, I would certainly like to see that. I did mention, in addition to the book, what we use is videos, really. And the videos really help communicate the messages, where we have puppies that are showing them and demonstrating to them how to be more loving, accepting, and forgiving.
Now, later on, we're going to give your website so people can write it down and go there. I love this little book, and we're going to get into it when we start talking about puppies and how they relate to children and how children can look at reality with clarity because of puppies. But before we do that, I think, as Travis mentioned, there is a whole lot of material. When we had lunch, you gave me a packet, and I spent the afternoon going through it. They're videos, and these are first class. You're saying that it's not stuff that somebody created with a crayon and a piece of lined paper. These are classic. This book, for instance, is very small, and you can get it by going to the website that we'll give to you. But their materials are top flight. They will make a difference, and it might be that you as a parent would like, maybe you have hellions for kids. Or maybe you have a dog that just doesn't demonstrate any of these things about which Travis is speaking. And if that's true, then you need to go to the website that we'll give you a little bit later. But right now, the name of the book is Laugh It Off. Laugh It Off. How to Unleash Your Superpower. And I'm not much into cute, but the puppy on the cover of this book is, well,
Cute.
kind of cute.
Yeah.
Guys, this is really hard work, man, especially when you're talking about puppies. I mean, we're very tired, and so we're going to take a break, have some cookies and milk, pet a puppy, and then return. We're hanging out with my friend Travis Vining. And you write this down, because there is no way in an hour program that we can even give you a little bit of the excitement and the depth and the profundity of this particular ministry. It's different, and it's hard to get your head around it. Or get it around your head at first. But if you'll go to the website, it's laughwithgod.com. And the laugh is spelled L-A-F. L-A-F-W-I-T-H God.com. Laughwithgod.com. Travis, there's some people that are viewing this on their screen or listening on the radio for whom this is really new, and they can't believe you're a Christian. They think you're from the dark side. Anybody that would bring dogs into something as serious as the gospel can't possibly be saved. Tell us a little bit. Travis's testimony is mind-blowing, and I want you to convince our listeners that you belong to Jesus before we go any further, okay?
Okay. Well, to start that story, I must say that I am from the dark side. That's kind of where my childhood started. You know, and Steve, you know, part of my family, especially my sister Roxy.
Yeah.
But I was brought up in a family that didn't believe in God. I was taught that as a very young child. My father, as it turns out, was a sociopath. I didn't know that as a child, of course. I didn't recognize that, wasn't capable of doing that. As I was growing up, it would turn out that my father was a con man. He used to take on other people's identities and sell land that used to belong to them or somebody else and make millions of dollars. And then later, when I was a little bit older, my father was found guilty of white-collar crime, basically. It was wire fraud, and he was sent to prison for 3.5 years. And this was back in the mid-'80s, I guess. I'm originally from Miami. I was born and raised in Miami. But when my father was sent away to prison, at that time, I guess, was when he decided that he was going to change his method of what he did and how he did things. And he became a violent serial murderer when he got out of prison. So he got out of prison in 1987. He murdered 4 people in a period of 17 months in 3 different incidents. And I was somewhat close to my father. My father would tell me some of what he was doing, not enough that I could stop him or get close enough to it or do anything about it at the time. But yes, I lived in a very dark place. I was suicidal at the time. I didn't understand what this world meant, to be honest with you. It made no sense to me. I certainly didn't believe in God. It just wasn't possible to me to reconcile those 2 things. My father was sent away for murder in, I think it was 1990, and he was sent to Florida's death row for one of the 4 murders that he committed. And somehow I seemed to escape that. I started a fairly successful life. I think really the reason for that is I met a woman. I found myself in a job in the travel industry, and I met a woman who is now my wife. We've been married for 31 years, but somehow she helped make me want to live and enjoy life. And we had a little girl, and she used to go to church all the time on Sundays, and I would wave to her goodbye. Even when we had our little girl, she'd take her to church, and I wouldn't go. It just wasn't my thing, but she never really pushed it on me, but she exposed me to that type of life. And the problem was I hadn't dealt with my childhood and my experience with my dad. And eventually I was brought to my knees. And what brought me to my knees was emotional problems. It was chronic back pain. I had sleep apnea. I used to wake up gasping for air. I couldn't breathe in the middle of the night. I had random nosebleeds. I had irritable bowel syndrome. It was just a series of things. Paralyzing migraine headaches. My wife used to have to take me home from work. And at the time, of course, I had no idea what was the cause of all this. And, this sounds like one of those stories that people tell. I'm grateful that I experienced it, that it's very real. I found myself my wife goes to a Catholic church. It was Holy Family. And I was in the Adoration Chapel, and there was this beautiful stained image of Jesus Christ. And I'd become addicted to painkillers. And I went there on my knees, and I looked at that image, and I said, God, please help me. And it was a real cry for help. I think the thing that was so identifiable about that cry for help was that I had no plans for how he needed to do it. In fact, death was on the table, and I think that's what I was hoping he'd do to me at that time. But something about that, I think, brought hope into my life. And soon after that, people started to show up in my life. I found people with similar experiences. I was exposed to true love and true forgiveness. And I found that was the answer to everything. I obviously didn't realize at the time that all of those physical and emotional problems I was having were the result of unforgiveness. If you think that it's more complicated than that, but I did not know how to deal with that. And as I started to seek my way, you talk about religion a lot, and I have to tell you, I had a real problem with religion. I wasn't interested in the teachings about Jesus, but I came very interested in the teachings of Jesus. So I started to study and look at what Jesus said and what he taught, and I tried to do what he said to do, not what others said about him. And the centerpiece of that was love, frankly. And, it took a long time and a lot of practice, but one of the reasons I use this process in this book, which is love, accept, forgive, is because I was told by a friend of mine who's a pastor. He said, don't ever tell somebody there's a shortcut to God, because the church doesn't want to hear that. But it seemed to me when Jesus said love is the greatest of all, and the Bible says that love is the fulfillment of all the other commandments, and I thought that's something I can understand and I could focus on. I focused on love. And then I came to recognize that without acceptance and forgiveness, I can't get there. And I need prayer to be a part of that as well. So I went through quite a few years of discovering and finding my way, and I found that Christ was the one that was guiding me, and it was an answer to that prayer. And it's changed my life entirely, Steve. You know that. You've seen me. Yeah. You know my family. You know my sister. You were at her funeral. And she didn't find the solution. She tried to, but she couldn't find it. But my life is full of joy today. There's no question about it.
Wow. Man, I just want to play the closing theme and end this program, man. That is so powerful. It just leaves me hanging. And your sister, whom I loved, and I spoke at the funeral, maybe there were times she didn't hug Jesus the way you did, but he hugged her, and he loved her, and she's home right now. I have a picture that she took hanging in my living room that kind of says it's a broken tree bent over by the wind. And every time I look at it, I think of your sister. And when I think of her, I think of a lot of other people who, like you, were broken in the wind. and found Jesus and have been restored and things have been different. Oh man, you don't want to miss a bit of this. We're going to get into puppies. I mean, we had to do Jesus first. After all, this is a Christian program. But we're going to talk about puppies when we come back. And you're going to be absolutely blown away with this. Laugh it off. LAF it off. And LAF are letters standing for an important truth. We'll talk about that. How to unleash your superpower. And if you miss any of this, your friends are going to say, and you missed it, and you're going to feel really, really bad. So stay with us. Like Jesus, we'll return. Thanks for joining us. We're talking to author Travis Vining, and his book is called LAF It Off.
Travis, it's a fun book, and who doesn't like a book with pictures of puppies? I mean,
Color pictures.
Yeah,
Kathy wouldn't.
Yeah.
Well, no, I like it.
Yeah.
Still waiting for hot dogs.
And by the way, with your background in counseling, do you do any counseling for dogs? I have a dog that's addicted to TV, and she barks whenever dogs come on the screen, and
that's nothing. I've got that transgender dog. Could you help me?
I think it's y'all that need the counseling.
Yeah,
There you go.
okay.
Yeah. You are good. You are good.
Now, tell us, it's your book is, I guess you'd call it an allegory, and tell us basically the story and what the components. Steve has mentioned the LAF components, but how that works into the allegory.
Sure. Kind of going back to, it was kind of almost an afterthought how it came about. We had created these wonderful programs for kids called Unleash God's Love. And we're teaching kids about love, acceptance, and forgiveness. And I was just inspired to start writing a story about it. I don't know how other people write, but I typically don't know where it's going when I started. I started it probably about 2 years ago. And I just started telling this story. And the story was really to help communicate what we try to teach children in this program and using these videos. And as it came about, I recognized a lot of similarities with my childhood. And we were talking about Roxy as well. Actually, the description in the beginning of the little girl on the lake reminds me of my sister, and it made me think of my sister. And really, the story is about a little girl who's struggling. She's young, 11 years old, and she's having a hard time staying happy. And her parents are divorced, and she's got some girl in the neighborhood that's bullying her. And she finds herself kind of lost in this little park. And she's upset and frustrated, and she just doesn't understand, and it's on her birthday, why she can't be happy. She looks up and sees a group of puppies kind of off in the distance. Without realizing it, she basically says a prayer. It's not what it's called in the book initially, but she kind of cries out and wants to know why are puppies so happy? What makes them so happy? And from that point forward, she goes on this adventure and this journey with these puppies. And they take her through enchanted forests. They take her through dangerous encounters, and they teach them about themselves and why they are happy, loving, accepting, and forgiving. And kind of the surprising part of the story is that all of these puppies had difficulties that they experienced as puppies, things that happened to them, whether they were abandoned or hurt by mean dogs or whatever that is. And what they do is they try to teach the little girl what it is they did and what they do that makes them so happy. And the first part, of course, is LAUGH stands for love, accept, forgive. So they teach her how to be more loving. And they teach her that it's important to love people that you don't think that deserve it. And the reason you do that is because how you treat others is how you treat yourself and how you feel inside. So they talk about the importance of being able to love those that you don't agree with and that you don't like, and even those that are hurtful, and the importance of prayer in that. And then she learns about acceptance. And the thing about acceptance is, I think people make a mistake oftentimes. Acceptance is accepting people, others as they are, including yourself, not forcing other people to accept you. I think that's a mistake that society seems to be making today, that they get those things confused. And then, of course, forgiveness, which is the most important component and the most valuable lesson in this journey that she takes, is learning how to forgive those, and that forgiving others doesn't condone bad behavior. And it's for example, when you say turn the other cheek, it does not mean to submit to abuse. It means not to add to it or to make it worse. And I think what the story does is it allows a way for children to relate. It kind of opens their minds. They're engaged by the puppies and the experience and the cuteness of it all. And I think they can relate a little bit better to it rather than sometimes what they might hear in church. So I think it's a complement to that, but it gives them some depth to it and some understanding to it. You know, I often say that the laugh, LAF, it's not just a cute acronym. It really is a proven spiritual process that children can easily understand and incorporate into their daily lives. And that's the goal, really. The goal is to provide them with something tangible, something that they can understand that makes them desire to try to practice this way of living and recognize that true happiness and joy comes from within. It doesn't come from things on the outside. And I think a friend of mine once said, he's my pastor friend, he talked about how, he says, children, they can understand Santa Claus. That's a very easy concept for them to understand, but sometimes Jesus gets so complicated that it's not the same. But children understand that Santa Claus, if you behave a certain way, you're going to receive gifts. And what we're trying to teach, that the gifts of the Spirit of Christ and of God are so much greater than anything else you could possibly ever seek, that it's worth pursuing. That being happy, joyous, free, and at peace is something that even a child at a young age can understand, can benefit them in their lives in wonderful ways.
Oh, man, so good. By the way, you can get this book. And, if you're in education, it's the kind of book you ought to consider for your school to use for all the children. But this is a dynamite book for your family if you have children. So go to Laugh with God, LAFwithGod.com, and you can find this book there with a cute puppy on it, and you can find a whole bunch more materials to support you in a new way of teaching. Our guest, Travis Vining, is the author of this book. I don't think he drew the pictures, but maybe we'll ask him. Don't go anywhere. We're coming back. Hey, thanks for spending time with us. By the way, if you haven't yet subscribed to the weekly Key Life email, you're missing out. So while you're thinking about it, don't do it till the program's over, or you'll get the fever and die. But you as soon as you can, go to keylife.org/subscribe. And it's free, so I don't expect any complaints from anybody about that. We're talking to Travis Vining. What a different and fun program.
Yeah, I love the puppies approach. Honestly, you could take a bunch of puppy photos and revise the Communist Manifesto. And I would probably get a couple chapters in before I finally started putting it all together, what you were doing. But the idea of story-driven and values as a way of approaching the gospel, it's so smart because, it's a great entry point, because even if you're talking to a communist and you're talking about values, they'd be like, obviously, being kind to someone is better than kicking them in the shin. And you're like, cool, why? And you're like, oh. And then it all falls apart for them. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your strategy of using that as the entry point of getting into the story and then, ultimately it leading toward the gospel message?
You know, I'll do my best to answer that question. I don't know. You know, as I said before, I'm not sure how others write. I was inspired to write it. I don't know where it's going. The story just kind of took that on. But honestly, what I was sharing with the children and using puppies to communicate that was my life experience with it, my life experience with the gospel, and learning how to relate, understand it, interpret it, and more importantly, apply it to my own life, because I think that's what makes the most difference. And I just felt like puppies was the way to do it. It just was an inspiration. It was very clear to me that puppies demonstrate unconditional love, which to me is what God is. And that has been my experience. And it was not difficult to tell a story where these puppies were actually demonstrating this behavior and explaining it to a little girl in a way that she could not only understand it, but it made sense to her. And as you tell in the story, she was a little bit resistant at first because it just seems so simple that if I'm more loving, accepting, and forgiving, I'm going to be a happy person. But then she does begin to understand that the golden rule is simply the world treats you the way that you treat the world. That's kind of the basis of it. But in order to be able to do it and to be more loving and accepting and forgiving takes a little bit of practice, if not a lot, and a lot of prayer. You know, and this came about was actually a prayer. I started saying in the morning years ago, which was, God, help me laugh today. And it started with that because I wanted to have a sense of humor about myself and others. Help me to love everyone, including myself. Help me to accept everyone and everything, including myself, and help me forgive everyone and everything, including myself. And setting love as a goal set up two things: a relationship with Jesus Christ, because I needed that, because I was incapable of doing it on my own. And then the next step, of course, was acceptance and forgiveness, because I found out real quickly just how loving I was not. And as I go through the day, I still do that. And what it does is it brings to my attention where my shortcomings are. So I think looking into the gospel and being supportive of what we're teaching these children, what I wanted to do was communicate it in a way that wasn't caught up in a bunch of religious jargon, because they get plenty of that. They get that, and it's very important. I wanted to do something that could supplement that and help a children's minister or a facilitator or a Christian school teacher communicate it in another way that they go, oh, okay, now I understand what you're saying. That makes sense to me. So it just kind of, it came naturally, to be honest with you, because it's a practice that I've used for many years. And I do think it stands up. It's very solid from the gospel. And if you look at what Jesus taught, it was all about forgiveness and love. And I think that's a very simple message to get children to desire it, as opposed to making it something that's a difficult thing to learn. If that makes sense, I hope.
Oh, it does. Yeah. And you know something, this book and the ministry that you've created, or that God has created through you, is not just for children. You know, we are so religious, we miss what you're just talking about. I can see parents who get this book for their children reading it and falling apart as they begin to realize how important this is for them, too. We were talking the other day about Sally Lloyd Jones. What is it, the Children's Picture Study?
Jesus Storybook Bible.
Yeah, that Jesus Storybook Bible, like this book, Laugh It Off, is the kind of book that was designed for children, but will hit you in your heart and remind you that this isn't about religion. It's about a relationship with somebody who loves you deeply and profoundly. What are some of the comments? Do you get criticized for this? Once you understand it, I can't imagine there being any criticism.
Not to my face, not yet. Maybe from my wife. No, but Steve, what you said was very interesting, because the videos that we have that go along with the programs, the Unleash God's Love, which is a 6-part series, that what we found is the parents who are in the room that are watching those videos seem to become children again, because they're looking at it through their children's eyes, trying to understand the message that we're teaching children. Inevitably, if they watch it afterwards, they're like, oh, you can just see the reminder of what God's love really is and how short we fall and trying to be forgiving each day in our lives, and the importance of forgiveness and being more forgiving in our lives. So we do see that happen, and of course, Jesus says, "Come to me as little children." And for me, my spiritual growth has been coming to God in Christ with childlike curiosity. Every morning, I get up at 3:30 or 4 in the morning and sit quietly for about an hour, and I come to Christ and God with childlike curiosity, and it's changed everything in my life. So my hope is that others will pick up some of those habits that I was taught in this way, that it will be helpful to them as well.
Oh, man, that's so good. This has been a great hour. And if you're a preacher, by the way, and they're complaining about your sermons, get this book and preach next Sunday on puppies. You
Bring some puppies in.
I know, yeah, or bring a puppy in. You might be surprised at the reaction you'll get. Travis, what a fun hour, and what a fun guy you are, and the difference you're going to make. I want to give that website to you again. You need to write it down. Laugh with God, LAF with God.com. And if you go there, you can find out more about Travis, about this ministry, how you can apply it in your own household or in your own school. Travis, every time you come on with us, and we hope you will again, you get 3 free sins. You have to be very careful because you're way behind. But Jesus loves you anyway. Guys, the name of the book, Laugh It Off, How to Unleash Your Superpower. You got to get this for your children's sake, for your school's sake, for your church's sake. Travis, God bless you, brother. You keep doing what you're doing, and we'll keep talking about it, okay?
Thank you, Steve. Thank you all very much. Very grateful. Very grateful.
Hey, guys, we're going to come back and tell you who we're going to do it unto next week, and you're going to be amazed. Great hour. One of the best things that I like to do, and Fred Smith taught me this, my late mentor. He loved introducing friends to friends. And so I got a chance today to introduce a friend to my friends, the ones that are sitting here at this table and you guys that are watching or listening. And it makes me feel good when my friends meet my friends. And Travis is onto something that is so good. We make religion, and I guess, I've been a seminary professor for a lot of years, and I'm not totally against religion. But sometimes things get so religious that Jesus gets lost. And the love and the forgiveness and the acceptance, which is at the very heart of what the Christian faith is all about. If you're not a Christian, that is what it's about. It's not about being good. It's not about politics. It's not about who you know or what church you go to. It's about love and acceptance and forgiveness. And if you had asked me before we had this program or before I knew Travis, that how about teaching it with puppies? I would say, listen, quit smoking that stuff. It's not good for you, and it makes you weird. But it is good. Maybe we need to talk about puppies a lot more. So, next week, we're going to have somebody that has a puppy, right?
I don't know. I didn't check that as part of the criteria. 26 years ago, our friend Paul Zoll wrote a book that really was the quintessential book on the subject of grace, grace in practice. Can you believe that? 26 years ago. And but anyway, he's a part-time resident of Central Florida. Part of the year he's here, and part of the year he's up north. And so he's going to be with us next week, and we're going to talk about Grace in Practice, A Theology of Everyday Life. It's a great book. If you've never read it, get it and read it before next week.
Oh, and he's one of the most articulate, sophisticated scholars that you'll ever meet, and you're going to love next week. And he was one of the forefathers of the Grace movement. I found this book from a student who was a doctor when I was teaching a class in Washington. He said, I know a guy who sounds a little bit like you. I'm going to bring you a book, and you should read it. And I did, and that led to my meeting Paul and becoming his friend and recommending that book to everybody that I knew. You just don't want to miss next week. And we're going to be here, same time, same place. Hope you'll join us, same time, same place. Between now and then, don't do anything we wouldn't, and that gives you a wide, wide berth.
All right, I don't like it.
I don't want to do that anymore.
I feel weird.